Welcome, everybody. We are so excited about this episode, episode 6. It is with my precious friend, Mike Hardwick, and he's going to share a little bit. And I just wanted to thank all of you that are joining up with our podcast. We're going to be talking with athletes and musicians and just continue to bring the best people that have stories, redemptive stories. All of us, to be honest with you, all of us have a redemptive story. Mike Hardwick is a is a man who's started with like nothing, like a lot of entrepreneurs, and yet he made something really special of his life. And he's writing now and then helping people kind of get people's story. And that's really what this next episode is about. It's um it's a great second book for him. Um, so I wanted for Mike to kind of share a little bit about this book called Called to Serve. And I believe it's going to be coming out here pretty soon. Is that right? November. And so start looking for that one. But we just got through talking about his other book, Keep Chopping Wood. But this is just another extension of Mike. He's giving back. He basically is giving back, and it's worth every penny and dime and dollars that you spend to kind of get a book like Mike, because he spends time, make sure he gets the story right and brings the right people. So I'm looking forward to him sharing a little bit about what was the inspiration that prompted his this book, and then briefly tell us, about, in terms of what team maybe, or what was the process of selecting for the people for this book. All right, well, listen, I'll stop there. Mike Hardwick, welcome.
Thank you, Ken. It's good to be with you again.
Great. Yes, sir.
Enjoyed the last episode. I believe it was episode number 5.
Yes, sir.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
This Mike's got, we're calling this two episodes, leaving large imprints, and Mike is doing that, and he's got a platform where not all of us have, and so that kind of gives him an opportunity to meet some really great people. So I'm really looking forward to sharing a little bit about
thank you
people and what this book's about.
Well, here's the manuscript. A lot of work has gone into this, and before we get really deep in, I do want to recognize 2 people that have been very, very instrumental in helping me put this book together. A lady by the name of Dava Guerin. Dava actually helped me a lot on my first book. And then Sam Royer. Sam was an employee at Churchill Mortgage, and he's got a real heart for veterans and for first responders. And this book would never have been a reality without both of them being involved.
It takes a lot, doesn't it?
It takes a lot. It takes a lot. Kenny, you know the scripture that talks about, to whom much is given, much is expected. Mm-hmm. And you and I have been given much. I don't think that always refers just to financial rewards, although we've prospered and done well. God has blessed us there. Mm-hmm. But I look at our great country, America, with all of its warts, with all of its issues, and all of its problems, both in the past history and in the present day. Notwithstanding all of the issues that we have struggled with throughout the history of our country, I still say America is the greatest country in the history of mankind.
Absolutely.
And I've had the good fortune, as I know you have, of over the many years I've lived now. I'm 70 years old. Hard to believe I'm that old. But I've had the good fortune of traveling all over the globe. I sat down one night not too long ago and made a list, and I think it was 26 different countries that I've been able to travel to. As far away as Russia. Made a trip to Moscow back in 1994. But travel all over the globe. And every time I come home, I'm thankful for America. I remember one day years ago, Dad was talking to a group of us, And he posed the question of the thought. He said, what do you think America would look like today if there were no churches?
Wow.
Now, you can spend a lot of time thinking about that, but here's the bottom line. It wouldn't be pretty.
No.
There'd be a lot more crime of all kinds with all the imperfection of Christianity and other religions. We still are far better off with some level of faith and hope and something that causes us to aspire to something outside of ourselves that's better. So thank God for churches. Well, that got me to thinking a few years ago, actually. I became a little concerned and worried, but particularly with what's been going on in our country the last few years. Specifically, some of the cities, the move to defund the police.
Yeah.
It really bothered me. It really worried me.
I would think most Americans are concerned about that.
I believe that. I believe that. And as I began to think about that, I began to consider who are the real heroes in our country. Okay, now thank God for our military. Thank God for the veterans and all the millions of people who have laid their lives on the line so that we could live and experience the freedoms we have in this country today. Thank God for them. But also, thank God for our policemen.
Oh, yeah.
And our firefighters, our emergency medical workers, our EMT workers, our school teachers. Thank God for them. I believe that if we didn't have an army of first responders in our country, what would happen if you're in a bad car wreck and there's no EMT worker to help get you to a hospital? And when they get you to the hospital, if there aren't good doctors and nurses to care for you, what would happen? If your home caught on fire and there weren't firemen to come help put the fire out.
Yeah.
So I began to refer to these first responders as the real heroes in America. And I really believe that.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to do things that would help them, encourage them, lift them up a little bit, particularly in the day and age that we're living in right now. And so with that thought in mind, and with the real help of Sam Royer and David Guerin, we went out and we began to interview scores of them all around the country. Churchill Mortgage right now, we're licensed in 49 states, and we've got physical branches in well over 20 of those states. And so we went out into cities where we have branches, for example, and we interviewed policemen, firefighters, EMT workers, school teachers. We interviewed well over 100 of them. And we heard their stories. We asked them questions like, where did you grow up? What was your home life like? What did you want to be when you were a child? And how did that change as you moved into your teenage years? And then when you ultimately decided to become a firefighter, or an EMT worker or a policeman, what motivated you to get in that job, and what keeps you motivated to do your job well every day? Kenny, I have to tell you, we didn't talk to a single one. And again, we interviewed over 100. We didn't talk to a single one that did not have a compelling story, a fascinating story, many of them just gripping.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to narrow those 100 or more interviews we did down to about 15 or 16 of their stories that we wanted to tell in this book. And so the book that we've got coming out again in November the 1st, Call to Serve, the subheading, The Inspiring Untold Stories of America's First Responders. I hope many of our listeners will go get this book. You'll be glad you did. It's a great book. If I say so. It's not great because I played a key role in writing it or putting it together. It's great because of the stories that are told in the book.
I mean, you think about 9/11. I mean, these people, talk about heroes, Mike. They they ran in buildings that they knew they probably weren't coming back out.
Yeah.
But they were trained to save people, you know.
I don't know. In fact, I have serious doubt that I could do a job like that. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to run into a burning building, to hear gunshots in a mall.
Yeah.
And my job is not run away from the gunshots, but to run into the mall, run into the school building, find the perpetrator and deal with that.
Yeah.
I doubt seriously that I have the wherewithal to do that. People that do, thank God for them.
Yeah, yeah.
They're amazing people.
Yeah.
They are heroes.
They really
in
are.
my book.
Wow. That's that just is put goosebumps on me, because I'm like, you're right. We don't know enough about who these people are and what motivates them.
Yeah.
And inspires them to serve in a thankless job.
Yeah.
Often. I mean, people spitting at your face, or
calling you bad names.
Yeah, yeah.
And I want to hasten to add, are there bad actors in the police world? Are there bad actors in the EMT world, the school teacher world? Of course there are. There are bad actors in the mortgage world. Thank God Churchill Mortgage is here helping tens of thousands of people achieve the American dream of home ownership. There are bad actors.
Sure.
There are bad apples in every bushel, as the old saying goes.
Yeah.
Of course there are bad actors, but the vast majority of school teachers and all these real heroes of America, the firefighters, the vast majority of them, they don't do it for money.
No.
Because if they did, they'd get in a different profession. I will tell you what we all know to some extent, although we don't think about it enough. And what I've learned, because my oldest son's wife was a school teacher, and we learned this with the ones in this book, many of them, in fact, I would argue that the majority of them cannot live in the communities where they work because they can't afford to buy a home in those communities. They have to live 30 minutes an hour and a half further out to be able to afford a home, and yet they drive and work in the communities where many of us.
Gas being full.
That's exactly right. That's prompted another effort that we have going right now. We don't talk about it in the book, but we've been working now for almost a year, and Sam Royer has really taken the lead on this. We're working with Congress right now, the federal government, on a new piece of legislation. We call it the Helper Act. And the purpose of the Helper Act is to fill a void, much like the VA filled a void for veterans coming home from wars that couldn't afford to buy a home.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have, 5 or 10 or 20% to put down on a home. And so
which resulted in the VA?
The VA Veterans Administration, where now we provide a good level of health care, VA hospitals. We provide VA loans to help veterans buy homes. The Helper Act is designed to mirror that and provide good home financing for many of these heroes, so they can afford to live in the community where they work. Right now, we've got close to 100 Congress people and senators that have signed on to co-sponsor that act. So let's pray that we can get this passed later in the fall as well. Wouldn't it be beautiful if we get that piece of legislation passed at the same time we come out with our book?
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be great? So we're working on both those fronts, trying to really provide a level of help and encouragement and support to our policemen, firefighters, EMT workers, and school teachers.
Mike, what's interesting, a lot of these people, they don't consider themselves a hero at all, do they?
No, they do not. They do not. In fact, you and I were talking earlier before we started the podcast here about a relative of yours who was an older gentleman, a veteran of a previous war or wars. Yeah. And you recounted to me, he never talked about it until the latter days of his life.
Right.
That most people that work in these professions they don't go around talking about what they do.
Yeah.
They just go to work every day and provide a great level of care for us.
This man was served on my board for as long as we had him, for the 25 years that we had our one company. His name was Ernie Robertson, is my wife's father. And he was getting that, he had congestive heart failure. We did not realize until later in life what these metals were in his, and he never really would talk much about it. He kind of fluffed it off, just,
Yeah.
But Mike, the end of his life, he liked to go in a movie with me, so I'd take him to a double movie, double feature, and we'd go at lunchtime and or dinner, whatever it was, and before the second movie, and there, sure enough, I kept prodding him. I said, Ernie, come on, give me. I said, it's just me and you here. Just tell me,
Yeah.
what you haven't told me about your life. And he said, well, I'm gonna make it short, but he said, basically, I had a platoon of men. There was probably, I don't know, 10 or 15 or whatever.
Right.
And he said, we were stationed by this river, and we were to protect that territory from the Viet Cong.
Mm.
And he said, somewhere, I think it was actually a little more. I think it was like 20 or 25. But bottom line is, he was the demolition expert of the group, and the sergeant and the lieutenant were the guys that were out there, and he said, I see some people rising out there, and he said, we better be careful. And so he said, I think we should do something. And from then on, he kept using the word we. He never would use his name, me, but he said, so we thought we would set up the camp and have all these sleeping bags out there on the middle key. He said, I could see it. He said, we could see the Kong coming closer and closer. And he said, so we just put our sleeping bags and all that out there, and as a sense of, and let's go back over in this little concrete barrier that we found, a concrete barrier. And he said, so we waited until the nighttime, and he said, sure enough, they blew up every part of that.
Wow.
And he said, we were in a concrete barrier that was made for 10 people. But he said, we stayed there until all that bombing was done.
Wow.
And he said, and then we left, as soon as it was done, we got out of there. And I said, you said we through this whole thing, Ernie. I said, what? Somebody had to be directing on this. I said, that we was you, wasn't it? And a little tear came down his face.
Yeah.
He looked off the side and said, just kind of nodded, like, okay, you want to hear the story, that. And
you're getting emotional telling it right now. What a story.
But, never told that story.
Yeah.
Till the end of his life. And I think, how many people are like that?
Well, you knew two of my uncles for sure. Uncle Alton Young.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Onell Wallace.
Yeah.
Both of them served in the military. I honestly don't recall ever hearing them talk about it. Ever.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Yeah.
I had dinner last night, Kenny. You knew most of these guys, and you'll appreciate this. I've got, I believe, 12 male cousins that live here in Middle Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Jim Wallace, Jack Wallace, Rich Forbes, David Young. You know most of these guys, and we get together one night every month for dinner at a different cousin's house. So last night was my month to have it at my house, and we actually talked about some of the men that I just mentioned there. None of us had to serve, but our fathers, grandfathers did, and they just never talked about it. I can't tell you the countless Thanksgivings and Christmases and times we all got together. They never talked about it.
Yeah,
it wasn't about them.
Yeah,
they did their service. They were heroes, but in their mind, like you said earlier, they didn't perceive they were heroes. They just did their job.
Yeah.
And that's what this book is about.
That's great.
It's about first responders who do not consider themselves heroes. They lay their lives on the line just about every day.
Wow.
and thank God for them.
Yeah.
Our country, our cities, where we live, our communities are far safer, far better off than if they weren't there day and night.
The book is called Called to Serve, and Mike and his team have done a great job on that. I think one of the things that, when we think about heroes, it's, I ask, I've done some funerals, Mike, and it just amazes me that people have asked me to do a funeral, and then I thought I knew their story. I didn't know hardly any of their story.
Yeah.
What is it that why we sometimes minimize our significance, or maybe it's not significant. Maybe it's just they may not feel like it's worth telling because they're not in the glamorous position to tell a story.
Yeah.
But everybody's story really, when God says you're wonderfully made in Scripture, you're awesome and wonderfully made. It's basically what it says, and He gave us a fingerprint. And I've got that right here in my book.
Yeah.
Everybody, Mike, has a story and needs to make sure that it's told, so that that my kids, your kids, my kids, your kids and grandkids, they know about the story.
Right.
Like you said, you met with all your family. We don't do that hardly anymore.
Yeah.
We don't know the story.
Yeah, it's really sad that we live in a world today, and there's a lot of good about this, but the vast majority of people in our country now, you've got part of your family, you got a brother that's in one state, and a sister that's in another state, you got cousins. I think right now my daughter, Megan, I told you Megan and her husband and 3 little children are flying into Nashville right now. Well, they live in London.
Yeah.
They live in London.
Yeah.
And she's over there by herself. And they've made a life. They've been there about 10 years now, and it's a wonderful thing. But all her 2 brothers and sister and their children all live here, so she's far away.
Yeah.
That's just the reality of where we live nowadays. But you can't take the place of family.
No.
And family needs to know the stories, how we got here. And so that's why I love your book, Leaving Your Life Imprint. It helps us realize how important it is to tell our stories.
Absolutely. When we were over in Italy, Mike, you'll appreciate this. We went to a vineyard, and it was.
Did you drinking wine?
I mean, no, but it was like 300, 400-year-old vineyard.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow. And they told the stories of when it started. And then, but here with this small little clump started here, but then this huge, amazing, unbelievable vineyard of grapes. It took, I don't know how many miles or acres, but it was just a great story to hear that they cherished that in Italy. And I was thinking, why don't we as Americans, maybe it's because we came across the land and developed into all this multicultural world.
Yeah.
But, I just think that's an important part as well in our story, is to encourage others to share with our kids, our grandkids. What about their little stories?
Well, you think about great preachers, great speakers, great orators. At the end of the day, all of them are great storytellers.
Yeah.
They tell great stories that captivate us as an audience, and we want to sit there and hear the story. And so that's what this book is. It's 16 great stories. And all you've got to do is read the first one, and you'll read the last 15.
Wow.
You'll read every one of them. These stories are compelling. They're great, and they're real life stories.
Yeah.
It's not fiction.
Yeah.
These are real life stories, just like my first book, Keep Chopping Wood. They're great stories, and I just hope that I appreciate you having me on here today. I hope we've been able to bring a little value, but I hope that our listeners Well, go get this book.
Yeah.
Consider going getting my first book, Keep Chopping Wood.
Yeah.
I really think you'll be glad you did. Great stories.
Well, thank you, Mike, for your time. We've just had a great time sharing with Mike today, and what a wonderful man, and what a wonderful legacy he's left for his kids, his grandkids, and their kids. And that's really what this is about. It's about don't minimize your story. I don't care who you are, what you are. God's got a place and a calling on your life as well.
That's true.
So thank you for your time. God bless y'all, and we'll see you at the next episode, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching the show. If you guys have any questions, or if you would like to donate and receive the book, please head on over to kennymuck.org/show. Here you can ask us any questions that you might have, as well as make a donation. Thank you so much for watching.